What is going on, everybody? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. That is right. It is Friday. It's a great day, and it means it is time for our FAANG stock recap show, where every Friday we take a look at all the FAANG stock names. We take a look at all the news. We'll take a look at the stock charts at the end of the video, take a look at the price action. We are on the eve of earnings for all these stocks outside of Netflix, which we will talk about here in a minute. Their stock saw a major decline this week. Let's not delay things any longer. Let's jump right into Facebook. Started the week at 306, ended the week at 301. According to some analysts out there, FAANG looks kind of vulnerable. That's because you've had extreme multiple expansion in excess of the overall market. And it's something that's happened before. We've talked about how these names were just boom. They just broke to the upside, almost every single one of them. And we saw this week, Netflix reported earnings that weren't necessarily in line with what expectation was on the street. And guess what? You had a big multiple compression after that stock started heading down. So we'll see heading into next week with Tesla and Facebook and Apple and Amazon and Google and Microsoft. They're all reporting next week. So it could be a big week in terms of price action. I think you want to stay tuned to not only the investor channel, but your news feed heading into next week. Could be some buying opportunities if you see some big pullbacks. We'll talk about more about Netflix here in a second. Now, the tech executives are heading to the Senate for hearings on content algorithms. So they got these content algorithms at YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and they're going to waltz these executives into the Senate subcommittee on privacy and technology and the law. And this is just a long line. We've talked about it tons of times here on the investor channel. Is over the next 4 years, all I'm going to expect is these executives to be waltzed up in front of different senators. They're going to ask questions, and guess what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing, okay? Because guess who's funding half of the people that are sitting there, okay? Who does Apple and Twitter and YouTube and Google donate billions and billions of dollars to? That's right, people that have their butts in the Senate. So they're not going to do anything, but they're going to make look like they're going to do something. So is that me being cynical, or is that me being just realistic? I don't know. I'll let you decide. Facebook launching an audio suite to include Clubhouse rival podcast discovery. Thought this was kind of interesting. We talked about, I think, a show or two ago where Facebook was rolling out a Clubhouse copycat. You know, that's what Facebook does, okay? They see something that Snapchat does well, or Pinterest, or any of these other social media sites, and they just end up copying it and rolling it into their platform. And that's basically just what Facebook does. They just, you know, continue to do that over time. Now, what I thought was interesting here is they're rolling out a feature called Sound Bites, which allows users to record brief audio snippets and post them on their news feeds, just like you would like a video or something like that. Thought that was an interesting thing. And they're also going to include a partnership with Spotify and allow you to, you know, surf podcasts and things like that on Facebook. So if you got a podcast out there, you might want to interested in promoting it on Facebook now. Now, moving on to Apple. Started the week at 134. Guess what? End of the week at 134. Not necessarily surprising, okay, because you're heading into earnings next week. Investors have already kind of placed their bets. Sometimes option activity kind of quiets down around this time because you could have some big swings on the on the earnings day, and so investors kind of take a wait and see approach. But it was a big news week for Apple. They actually had an event on 4/20, which I think was Monday or Tuesday, and they launched several new products. Okay, an M1 iPad came out. That's a new iPad Pro. They've got this iMac redesign. This is actually these are actually really nice. Doesn't get me to upgrade, okay? It didn't look like the specs were good enough to get me to upgrade, but certainly a next generation or a following generation would potentially get me to upgrade on that. You've got an new Apple TV that has 4K and a new remote. I'm probably going to buy one of these. And they came out with the AirTags, which are these tiny little circle things that you can put in, I don't know, like a backpack. You could put it on a valuable piece of equipment, your car, a number of different things, and it allows you to basically track the location of that. So some antitrust issues probably coming forth with that type of thing. But overall, decent products coming out from Apple, and we'll see how this propels them going forward into their earnings week. Now, moving on to Amazon, started the week a little bit higher, 34.22, ended the week at 33.40. Dish Network is partnering with AWS on 5G networks and is going to name Las Vegas its first quote 5G city. So we talked about here, remember this was several months ago, I want to say, that it was kind of floated out there as a rumor that maybe Amazon would be interested in buying like a Dish Network, which has a ton of spectrum that they don't necessarily use that much. And so maybe Amazon could make a play into kind of the cell phone where you have an Amazon Prime subscription and all of a sudden it gets you cell service. So it'd be interesting to see if this partnership kind of opens the door to more of this with Amazon and maybe potentially an acquisition going forward. I'm not saying that's something I would expect. I just think this partnership could potentially lead to more things like that into the future. Now, Amazon and Google win just a $1.2 billion contract from Israel for cloud sites. This is for the public sector and military. So another big win actually for both those cloud services. Now, there is a formal objection claiming Amazon union voters were threatened with layoffs and pay cuts. Amazon security cameras were situated near on-site ballot boxes, and Amazon allegedly threatening layoffs and facility closures and threats of loss in pay and benefits. Obviously, these union leaders stood to make boatloads of money if they could unionize a certain segment. Just in Alabama, this is what the unions were thinking. If we could get Alabama Amazon to unionize, well, look, we could get the 500,000 or 700,000 employees. We could get them all on board, and that is millions and millions and millions of dollars to the pockets of these union organizers. Okay, I don't want to sound like I'm super critical of unions, but look, I grew up in a household of teachers. They were in a union. It did absolutely nothing for them. My wife started a job that wasn't in a union, got in a union. All of a sudden, 1% of her paycheck went out the door. And I could have a whole story about how the union, everyone I know that's in a union, it fails them. Okay. And maybe that's just my personal experience, but a union enriches the labor union behind it, doesn't necessarily enrich the employees. Look, there's laws in place that protect these employees from different types of things. You can get a lawyer, you could take it to the courts instead of filing for a union. And I think for these workers in Amazon, they made the right decision, and this is just kind of the aftermath of it all. A little bit of opinion mixed in there. Hopefully you guys don't mind that. Now, moving on to Netflix, not an opinion here. Start of the week at 553, and look at this. Boom, we got a waterfall all the way down. This thing in the after hours, I think, ticked under $500 per share, and the week right at a bunch of fives, 505, 55. And we get over the stock chart on this one. We'll talk about, is it a buying opportunity in Netflix, but also broadly, here's the type of move that you could see. This was like a 10% move. Could we see a 10% drawdown move in any of the other FAANG names next week? I think the probability, wouldn't necessarily say it's high, but it's definitely possible. And I tell you what, you get a 10% drawdown in Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Tesla. And boy, I might go shopping. We'll see what happens. Now, Netflix slid 10%, like I said, amid disappointing subscriber results. So you looked at these subscriber results. I posted a video here on the channel. You can look at our feed and find that video if you haven't watched it already. It was a disaster. I mean, their growth has absolutely completely stalled, okay? Especially here in North America and Canada. Now, we've talked about this on the show. The way Netflix is going to counteract that is by raising price. Now, unfortunately, you have Disney Plus, Hulu, all the other Peacock, HBO Max, all these other streaming providers. So they might not have as much pricing power as they would have maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. We'll see what happens with Netflix. It's a wait and see. This is the one stock out of this entire group that I do not own. In fact, I've never owned Netflix shares, particularly because it's a one-trick pony, and I believe they're going to need another layer to their business. Okay, I love companies like Apple and Amazon. that have just so many layers to their business. Netflix is pretty cut and dry. It's pretty simple business to understand. So I'll wait until it matures a little bit until I potentially jump in on that one. Now, moving on to Google. Start of the week, guess what? At 229968, end of the week at 229993. So basically dead flat, up like 30 cents on the week, like almost nothing. So now we had a nice little price action move today on most of these stocks. Actually, not a lot of news out of Google. I tried to find some news. Obviously, they're getting waltzed into the Senate. They won that cloud contract with Amazon. But other than that, not a bunch of news out of Google. Now, moving on to Microsoft. Start of the week at 260.16. End of the week up just fractionally to 261.15. Again, kind of a familiar story. We had that big drawdown yesterday. I think there was some news broke that President Biden might be raising the capital gains tax. I think people digested that and said, I don't think there's a lot of senators that would vote for that, Democrat or Republican. It's going to be something that's difficult to pass. And so I think people, rationally said, well, wait a second, that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and they started buying stocks. So we actually saw a lot of price action this week, but basically flat for most of these stocks. Now, Discord is said to end all talks to sell itself to Microsoft and others. This was a rumor to be around a $10 billion deal. Now, Microsoft made another deal earlier or last week. I think it was like Nuance Communications or something like that. Well, that was a big deal. And so Microsoft is like they've got money in the bank and they are trying to spend it. So we'll see if they're able to pivot to I thought the Discord would have been a nice tie-in with Microsoft, but overall not necessarily that big of a deal. Now, at Microsoft's Xbox Cloud Gaming is coming to iOS and PC in a limited beta. So I thought this was interesting. They've got this Xbox Cloud Gaming, which was formerly known as xCloud, and now you're going to be able to maybe potentially play these games on your iPhone, your iPad, and PCs on an invite-only beta testing. So we'll see when this beta testing is over how popular something like that could potentially be. Now, moving on to the last stock before we jump into the price action is Tesla. Start of the week at 712, melted up slightly to 729. Big news week for Tesla. Guess what? They have earnings. I think I incorrectly stated on the last show that it was on the 28th, 29th. Well, it got moved to Monday, April 26th. So expect a video around this time on Monday covering the Tesla earnings. I'd appreciate it if you came to the channel on that day and checked out our video. They've got, look, Tesla shows every quarter kind of already reported their delivery. So we can kind of back that into the numbers. We know what the price of these cars are. We know what the margin typically ends up being. And so Tesla's earnings are more about quote unquote surprises, what they could announce, a partnership, some kind of new product. Elon Musk just saying something, just saying something, okay? Because he does get on those conference calls and he's very colorful at times on those conference calls. So that's more about what's going to go on with Tesla. I think the numbers themselves aren't going to be that surprising. So we'll see what happens there. Now, Morgan Stanley's Adam Jonas raised the price target to 900 from 880 bucks. That's only 20 bucks. It's not really that big of a raise, but we're sitting here at $729. That's a good, what's that, 170 bucks on the stock price. So we'll see if Tesla is able to reach that level anytime soon. I thought this was interesting. So Tesla, Elon Musk announced on Twitter that Tesla has this solar business, okay? And when I was going to put solar on my house, I looked into Tesla as well. And they have these Powerwall batteries where you can put them either on the side of your house or in your garage. You can find a spot for them. And what happens is your solar generates typically, unless you're running your AC and all these TVs and everything, your solar is going to generate more power than you're using. So typically then you feed that back into the grid and you get a little bit of a credit from your power company. Well, what you can do is you can feed that power into a Powerwall battery, and then at nighttime, when there's no sunlight, obviously, and you're running off the grid, well, now you can run off your Powerwall battery. And so it is a good system. I'll tell you, this is completely anecdotal. When I was looking into my solar system, I talked to my installer about batteries, and they said that, and I don't think this is a shock to anybody, that the battery technology is just still probably 5 to 10 years away from really, we're seeing big giant leaps in battery technology. So they said certainly they could sell me a Powerwall battery or another battery system and charge me bunches of money. But they said, honestly, it'd be better just to wait 4, 5, 6 years until that battery technology really kind of caught up and then make that investment. So I appreciate them being honest with me about that. But now if you want to go with Tesla, you have to tie both of them in. You have to get the Powerball batteries, which are very expensive. These are thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. So this is more, in my opinion, the people that are going to be installing Tesla solar are going to be very, very affluent customers. Okay. These are going to be very wealthy customers because to be able to afford a solar system plus the Powerwall battery, that's a major, major expense. Okay. And so we'll see. It wasn't a big business for Tesla already. I just thought it was interesting that they decided to go that route. Now, earlier in the week, obviously Tesla had this, sorry, we feel bad for the people that were involved in this crash and their families. But I tell you what, it's interesting that every time Tesla has a crash, and autopilot could or might not be involved in this scenario. It doesn't look like it involved. And oftentimes there's a fatality involved, which again is a really sad event, but it makes the news. And it makes me think, well, how many Nissans are involved in fatal crash? How many Hondas? How many Toyotas? On a daily basis, there are fatal crashes for all those brands, but Tesla, it's actually extraordinary. Okay, that's how safe a Tesla is. Same with a Mercedes or an Audi or a Volvo. It's actually extraordinary to get in a fatal accident in those cars. And so when you see this news cross, again, my first thoughts go out to those families of the people involved. My second thought is this is an extraordinary event because these cars are extraordinarily safe. And so I wouldn't necessarily, when these types of stories come across, wouldn't make me concerned as a Tesla shareholder. I'm sure most of you are probably feeling that as well. Now, moving over to the stock chart. Interesting stuff going on here. I tell you what, again, we're on the eve of earnings. We had a monster move with Facebook. Came all the way up here from 315. I mean, we were down here at 250, came all the way up to 315. And we're kind of flagging out here. Okay, yes, we're in a downtrend. We're kind of sitting right here at 301. The stock doesn't necessarily know which way it wants to go. Two things can happen with this one. I think we could come back up here next week when we report earnings with Facebook. And if it's a good report, above average report, good guidance, whatever it might be, look, we can retest 316. We could even gap above 316. The other scenario is we just continue to reverse any pullback. Okay, a 10% pullback would pull this into the 280 range. Wouldn't necessarily be a deep enough pullback for me, but I'd think about it. I'd much rather get Facebook down in these ranges between 260 and 270. That in my, again, I'm already overweight most of these names. So when I say for me, understand that my portfolio is already super overweight these names. Okay. And so for me to want to pile on even more money and get even more overweight these names, the price really has to be right. Now, if you're a young investor, you're just starting out, you don't have a big portfolio, your thoughts can be completely different than mine. So I just wanted to explain that when we're talking about big pullbacks in these names, a minor pullback in this name that you don't have could potentially be a buying opportunity. Now, moving on to Apple. Had a nice move and we've kind of gone sideways. Okay, again, another scenario where this stock has hit its head on this 134 range and just hasn't budged for like a week or so. So two things can happen with Apple. When the numbers come out, which I think are pretty well telegraphed, we kind of know what kind of units they're going to be selling. Maybe not though. It could be that we have a really nice boost with Apple. And I think you could come back up here and retest 145 on this one. With a good earnings report, you could easily retest 145. And then you're sitting at 138 to 145 on this one. Now we get rejected, a pullback to 120, which is about 10% off on this one. Buying opportunity. All day long, buying opportunity. Anything south of 120 on Apple would be a buying opportunity next week. And look, you could get your opportunity next week. Now, Amazon looks almost identical to Facebook. We've had this big, gigantic move up where we came up to the all all-time highs. Okay, we were trading at the lower end of our range, came all the way to the top end of our range, about 34.40, we'll call it. And it's kind of flagged out sideways and kind of down. Now we're sitting right here at 33.40, $100 away from the highs, but any break above, we're basically sitting $100 over support. Okay, the support line right here, you break 3,300 on this one, you're probably coming down to the moving average, right around 3,180 or 3,200, somewhere in this range. That could potentially be a buying opportunity. As you guys know, if you watched the Saturday show and you saw my portfolio on mega overweight Amazon, it'd have to pull down in this $300 range, which would be, that would be a 10% move, over a 10% move. You get a 10% down draw on Amazon, in my opinion, probably buying opportunity. Now, we did get a 10% drawdown on Netflix. I did not buy it. I repeat, I did not buy it only because I think the only spot I'd think about getting Netflix was down here at 470. Notice that 470, buyers just step in at 470. Okay. Do buyers step in here right where we're at? 495, 500, right in that ballpark? Yeah, they step in. But look, I don't want to get caught buying this at 500 when $30 down below is where we've retested several times over the last year or so. So you get a pullback in Netflix to 470. This thing just melts down. FAANG just disappoints next week. Joe Biden says he's going to raise taxes to the moon. Okay, yeah, you're going to get a pullback, and Netflix could potentially be on that list, but probably rather just buy some other stocks as well. Not trying to hate on Netflix. If you own Netflix, look, it's a great stock. I really like it. I like I like the product. I like the stock. It's just not necessarily something for me, considering I'm overweight a lot of these other names and Disney and things like that. Now, moving on to Google. This thing just looks like a giant staircase. This thing is just moving up. So what's going to happen with Google next week? I think two things with Google. This is actually what I would be preparing for with Google. We're going to make another staircase. Okay. That's the first option, that they just come out with this blowout report and YouTube and all their ads just looks great. And we make another staircase, maybe up here at $2,400. That's potentially what happens. The other thing that happens is it's just kind of a blah kind of earnings report. And man, you could have a monster move down in this one. Okay. Because if you break this zone right here from 2,000 to 2,130 or so, we'll call it 2,100 to 2,000. If you break this right here, it is look out below. Look, it's coming to 19, maybe even 18, because there's just no support for the shares here. So I'll be watching Google very carefully. It's something that I want to add another share of Google. And when we're talking about a $2,000 stock, I'm typically buying just one share at a time, at least the size of portfolio I have. And so, yeah, if you get a big drawdown in Google, I will definitely look at that as a buying opportunity. Now, moving on to Microsoft, looks very similar, somewhat similar to Google, but also Apple as well, where we've kind of busted out. Now, the difference here, though, is we've busted out to all-time highs on Microsoft. So we're up in rarefied air up in here at 261. We're basically at all-time highs with Microsoft. So what's going to happen when they report earnings? Can it give us another leg up to 270, 275? Boy, if that happens, this thing has just made an incredible move. If you have a shorter-term view on Microsoft, that, in my opinion, could create a selling opportunity. You get another gap up in this one. You could take some profits there if you wanted to. Now, me personally, not really looking to take profits in these stocks. I'm looking to buy them and accumulate them over a long period of time, maybe 20, maybe even 25 years or so. Well, a pullback in this one to this zone between 230 and 240. Okay, that's about $20, $30 off where we're at. Pull back into this zone would be a buying opportunity. Again, about a 10% drawdown in this one would be, I don't want to say a snap buy, but I would be buying Microsoft very quickly because it is actually the one FAANG name outside of Tesla that I wouldn't consider myself overweight in. So I need more. I don't need more shares of Microsoft. I would like more shares of Microsoft to round out my portfolio. If that one dipped, you better believe I'll be in there buying. Now, finally, Tesla, start of the week, basically flat, okay? Now, but take a look. Over the last few weeks, we had a low here, made a low here at 540, higher low at 595, higher low at 660, higher low here at 7 and change. Okay. Clear defined uptrend in this one. So Tesla can do one of two things. We need to break above 777. That's a lot. You know, go to Vegas, you want to see sevens. So 777. If you own Tesla and you want to go to Vegas, you're looking for sevens next week. You break above 777 on Tesla. Well, look, easy 813, potentially even $900 per share is back in play in this one. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's where it goes. Now, Tesla could get rejected right around this. It's at an area where it will get rejected or it will go higher. Okay. It could, yes, we could create this zone in here and kind of wave out. That is potentially possible. But if we break, I would say this previous high here of $660, which again, ironically is about 10% where the stock is right now. You break that and then you're probably coming down to $600 range. Could potentially be a buying opportunity for Tesla. I'm not necessarily, wouldn't necessarily want out and buy that one. Depends on what happens with some of the other stocks as well. I think Tesla's got one of those stories that is still playing out. And I don't necessarily think I need to run out and buy Tesla. They don't pay a dividend. They're not executing a buyback, those types of things like Microsoft and Apple and Facebook's even got a buyback right now. And so I probably would rather load up on those before I made another move in Tesla. Now, you get a big, gigantic move in Tesla and you start trading. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but Tesla makes some big moves. You start trading sub $500 a share on this one. And then, yeah, I'm definitely coming in there and picking up a share or two in my retirement portfolio with Tesla. Guys, big week next week here on the channel. Consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm just asking you to hit that subscribe button. I've got some, you know, hey, I just want to really quickly thank people as well. Should have done this in the beginning. I've got some referral links in my description. I don't really promote them, and I've got more, way more than I expected. So I just want to show you guys some love. You've sent me some Bitcoin this week. I had some free stocks on Robinhood because I had some sign. I just want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. You can do it by hitting the like button, the subscribe button, or, you know, maybe one of those referral links in the description as well. Just want to thank all of you. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Buckle up. It's going to be a big week next week on the channel and in the stock market. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Good luck with your investments.